Who is the only U.S. president ever to be issued a U.S. patent? If you guessed Abraham Lincoln, you're right. My name is Matt Lappel. I'm a patent lawyer and an amateur historian. This is Inventing History, because history isn't just made, it is invented. In 1859, in a speech to the Illinois College, Abraham Lincoln gave the keenest and pithiest observation about the patent system which I have ever seen. He stated, quote, "Before patents, any man might instantly use what another had invented, so that the inventor had no special advantage from his own invention. The patent system changed this, secured to the inventor for a limited time the exclusive use of his invention, and thereby added the fuel of interest to the fire of genius in the discovery and production of new and useful things." But what was it that made Abraham Lincoln such a supporter of the U.S. patent system? And what led him to his own patent? Abraham Lincoln grew up on the frontier, poor. But despite his poverty, he was driven. He had a fire, and he was brilliant. Self-educated, he became a lawyer and a designer and inventor. During his time as an attorney, Lincoln worked on several patent cases, most notably when he was co-counsel, or was replaced by, his future Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, as they argued to enforce the patent of John Henry Manny, an inventor of an innovative mechanical reaper. Basically, a harvesting device. However, what sparked Lincoln's invention was not the farm economy of the Midwest, the frontier at the time, or his work as a patent lawyer. What sparked his invention were his experiences as a much younger man. In his 1860 autobiography, Lincoln recounted that while in his late teens, he took a flatboat down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers from his home in Indiana all the way to New Orleans, while he was employed as a hired hand. A few years later, Lincoln made another trip as a laborer for boat owner Denton Offutt, taking a flatboat of merchandise down the Sangamon River all the way through the Illinois River and to New Orleans. While doing so, he must have witnessed the many steamboats, flat river boats, and sandbars, banks, snags, and other obstacles that those boats faced along the rivers of frontier America. Before Offutt's boat could reach the Illinois River, it got hung up on a mill pond only a few miles outside of Springfield. Lincoln jumped to action, working with his fellows to unload most of the merchandise from the boat, righting it, draining it, and then ultimately carrying it across the portage and back into the river. Finally, and perhaps most tellingly, Lincoln's law partner and biographer, William Herndon, reports of another incident in 1848. A boat that Lincoln came to from his steamboat was stranded on a shoal. Lincoln watched the boat's captain order the crew to gather together empty barrels, boxes, loose planks, and to force these objects under the sides of the steamboat in order to buoy it over the shallow water. The boat gradually swung clear and was dislodged after tremendous effort by the men. These events in Lincoln's everyday life sparked him to think about how it would be possible to solve the problem he had witnessed. After being elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, Lincoln reported to Washington, D.C. in March of 1847, and soon thereafter hired a patent attorney, prepared drawings, and filed his patent, as Lincoln would write in the opening paragraph of his patent. "Be it known that I, Abraham Lincoln of Springfield, in the county of Sangamon, in the state of Illinois, have invented a new and improved manner of combining adjustable buoyant air chambers with a steamboat or other vessel for the purpose of enabling their draught of water to be readily lessened, to enable them to pass over bars or through shallow water without discharging their cargoes." And on May 22, 1849, Abraham Lincoln was awarded U.S. patent number 6469. Here's an image of the front page of his patent. Now, for convenience, let me clean it up and move the figures around so they're a little easier to see. How did Lincoln's invention work, you ask? Well, let me take figures 1 and 2 from his patent and walk you through it. Figure 1 is a side view of a riverboat. I have added a blue line to show about where the water line would have been when it was in the water. And I've put on yellow highlighting for the guards that Lincoln added to protect his system. When Lincoln's riverboat came to a snag or a low point or a sandbar, either steam power or muscle power could be used to turn the shaft C, a long pole that ran from the front of the boat to the back of the boat, and to which was attached wires or ropes or chains marked F in this figure. When that shaft was turned one direction, it would slowly push down a bellows, kind of an accordion-like device that had a hard flat bottom to which the ropes were attached, would drive them down into the water, as I've shown here with the red highlighter. And as you can see, the bellows would have driven down into the water and acted much like the barrels and boxes that Lincoln once saw a riverboat captain push under his own steamboat in order to buoy it over a low point in the water. We're fortunate that we don't have to rely simply upon the drawings and written description of Lincoln's patent. Instead, because of the patent law at the time, Lincoln made and submitted a model. All inventors at the time were required to submit not only their drawings and written description of their invention, but to actually submit a scale model of the invention and how it would work. Here we see both the side view, much like the drawing, and the front view, much like Figure 2 drawing. In later years, Tad Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's youngest son, would say that Tad's fondest memories of his father were those times that he and his father went to the U.S. Patent Office and walked through the library of many, many models of U.S. patents together, marveling at the inventiveness of America. Critics and historians reading his patent question whether Lincoln's invention would have actually worked. Personally, I think it would. But Lincoln had a greater destiny. After completing his time in Congress, he returned to Illinois to continue his law practice and raise his family. But Lincoln grew increasingly concerned by the divisions in the nation and the terrible practice of slavery. For whatever reason, Lincoln never devoted the time to build a full-scale prototype, commercialize his invention, or begin improving navigation on America's frontier rivers. Indeed, improving river navigation remains an important problem today. Modern ships, modern cargo carriers, still run aground in the rivers of the United States and the world. Instead, he returned to politics. In 1858, Lincoln would seek to be elected as the senator from Illinois, sparking the famous Lincoln-Douglas debates, which placed the issue of slavery front and center before the nation. Lincoln would lose that election, but come back 2 years later to seek and win the U.S. presidency. Upon his election, the die was cast. The slave states began to secede, making the U.S. Civil War inevitable. President Lincoln went on to lead the U.S. through the bloodiest war in the entire history of our nation. He grieved with the Union for the losses at Gettysburg. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing enslaved people all across the South. And he began to lay the groundwork for a forgiving post-war Reconstruction. On March 4, 1865, Lincoln would deliver his second inaugural address to the nation. Lincoln understood how terrible, how bloody, how awful the preceding 4 years had been. He understood the calls for vengeance because it appeared that the Union was close to winning the war. But he closed his inaugural address with compassion and calls for forgiveness. As he beautifully stated, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all we may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves. Perhaps, in his happier moments and daydreams, in the Oval Office, he thought about what his post-presidential career would be, and the many useful things that he would invent, build, sell. But it was not to be. Only a month later, on April 14, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln attended the play Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater. At 8:15, John Wilkes Booth slipped into Lincoln's theater box, drew a pistol, and fired into the back of Lincoln's head. Hours later, the president was dead. As a patent lawyer, I am in awe of inventors. As a historian, I am in awe of Abraham Lincoln. Every historian likes to play a game of what if. What if Abraham Lincoln had decided to focus on commercializing his patented invention? What if he had decided that he should spend his life dedicated to improving navigation to, as he put it, add the fuel of interest to the fire of his own genius? River navigation might be safer today, but history and our nation would be immeasurably poorer. And for all his faults and failures, we, Americans, are indebted to him for his decisions to serve the nation rather than his own interest. My name is Matt Lapple. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And if you really enjoyed it and want to show your support for this channel, or perhaps more importantly, Abraham Lincoln, check out our online store. We have merch, including these t-shirts with Abraham Lincoln's patent drawings on the back. Thank you. This video was made to entertain and inform. This is not legal advice, and I am not your patent lawyer.